Hi, I'm Jennie Hardin, VP of Brand and Digital Marketing at ezCater, and welcome back to ezCater's Lunch Break podcast. In our last episode, we had a great conversation with Bevy CEO Kathy Leuenberg about workplace friendships in the hybrid area, how people are coming into the office because they crave connection and they want to create those friendships to drive engagement. And in this episode, we're going to continue on the theme with connection and are going to dive into food's powerful role in driving workplace engagement, connection, and on-site attendance, ultimately leading to greater productivity for employees and the companies that they are a part of. Our future of workplace experience data reveals that food isn't just a nice to have perk. It's become the number one draw for encouraging employees to come to the office, and it's a critical ingredient, pun intended, for fostering workplace relationships and collaboration. So to help us dissect the data is the one whose team brought it to us in the first place, and we're going to talk to Madison Edwards, Director of Brand and Customer Research. She's steeped in research and insights about workplace food, not only about our Future of Workplace Experience report, but in everything across the landscape of workplace food and workplace experience. She's out talking to customers every day, diving into these quantifiable insights, and we're really excited to have her here. So essentially it comes down to that she's the expert when it comes to the why and the how of workplace food solutions. So how's that for an intro, Madison?
I've never been introduced so graciously before, so thank you, Jennie. I'm really excited to be here, and we do have all kinds of rich data and insights on the future of workplace experience and the role that food plays in it. So I'm happy to jump in.
Yeah. Before we do dive in, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself. I obviously know who you are, but for those who are joining us on YouTube or with a podcast app, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Sure. As Jennie said, I'm Madison Edwards. I'm the Director of Brand and Customer Research at ezCater. I lead a team of researchers who understand kind of the market overall, trends in the marketplace related to the workplace and related to food in the workplace in particular. And we also dive really deeply into understanding our customers, how they're using our products, what their pain points are. What that means day to day is that we are having one-on-one conversations. We are visiting with folks on site. We are running surveys and gathering data that help us understand not just kind of the dynamics of today, but help us to understand and think about some of the dynamics of tomorrow as well. I love it. It's a really fun job, and I love opportunities like this to talk about it.
Yeah, safe to say every conversation I have with Madison, I learn something new each and every time. And the fact that you're talking to customers across all different industries, organizations of all sizes, workplaces that range from construction sites and hospitals to your traditional kind of office environment, you're a wealth of information. So let's dive in. And we're going to start with one of the data points that I brought up in the intro, which is that food is the number one workplace perk employees want. It leads the pack at 44% when employees are asked what they want more of in terms of perks that their employers provide. Yet, only 19% of employers are currently offering food perks. So there's this interesting disconnect and possibly a major missed opportunity when it comes to providing food and meeting employees with what they want most of. So Madison, like I said, this seems like such a clear disconnect between what employees want and what companies are providing. And from your perspective in analyzing this data and talking to customers, what do you think is behind this gap? And what do you think is the business case for companies to start to close it?
Yeah, I think just to talk a little bit about the data, you said that it was on top at 44%. That is, food perks lead the pack when we ask employees what they want more of. And just to give some context, that's coming out on top of some very compelling alternatives. So things like flexible working hours, education benefits, physical health resources like a gym membership. And I think one of the reasons that these food perks are so appealing to employees is that it's also more unique. So they are offered by fewer workplaces. And so workplaces that do offer food perks can really stand out in that way to current and potential employees. Another reason that food is kind of on the top of the list, according to employees, is that it's universal. Of course, everybody eats. We have work days that cover a mealtime. No matter what your kind of work day span is, there's normally a mealtime within that. Not everybody is seeking further education. Not everyone is looking for a gym membership, but everyone eats. So there's so many reasons that's kind of the case for employees, why it's so valuable to them. For employers, the case for investing in a food perk, I mean, I think there are many, and we'll talk more about some of them throughout, but I'll start with a few. First of all, of course, employees love it. So it
That's
helps.
important. Giving
Yes.
something that employees want and they're actually going to use, you're not just kind of putting dollars aside for a perk that sits on the shelf.
Yeah, and there's an outcome to that too. It means that you get a benefit in terms of employee attraction, retention, engagement, on-site attendance. I know we'll talk more about that too. Employees also say that they are more productive when food is provided. They don't have to spend their time going off-site to grab lunch, and they're also more fueled to do their work, whether that's brain fuel, physical fuel. They have the energy to do their jobs well. There's also been just so much research over time, I won't take all the credit for it, about how collaborative and interdisciplinary teams yield better results for the business. Food is really a facilitator of that. When employees eat a meal together, they make a human connection, and that leads to the type of collaboration that also gets us to better business outcomes.
That's great. And collaboration is something that we talk about throughout the report and throughout the podcast series as well. And really food as a way to bring folks together, create more kind of informal or organic conversations that lead to ideas and innovation and just ways in which you can feel more connected to your workplace. So that's a huge one too. And one thing as well that it drives, especially in the era of return to office, is on-site attendance. So food is the top driver based on our report for return to office and returning to the workplace. And hybrid and remote employees agree that food-related perks, again, are the number one draw to encourage on-site attendance. And when asked specifically to choose just one amenity that would convince employees to work on site more frequently, more than a quarter of Gen Z specifically selected food-related perks. And like you said, that was more popular than education benefits, commuter stipends, even flexible time off. So it's pretty powerful. The potential there is pretty powerful to drive results for your business, especially when we think about these return to office mandates. And so I'm curious, what makes food such an effective incentive to compare to other perks that companies might offer when you're looking to get employees back to office and create an environment that they actually want to come to versus one that feels like you're pulling them to the workplace begrudgingly so?
Yeah, I think food both takes a burden away from them because it's not something they have to do. So let's talk about that one first. Food is a daily task when you are working on site. You either have to, if you're bringing food from home, that means you have to think about what to buy when you're at the grocery store, you have to shop, you have to prep the food to bring it in. And that takes your time and your mental energy to do it. You can buy lunch, but you also have to take time from your work day to do that. You have to kind of pause what you're doing, go get in line somewhere or order your food on an app. And of course, you're spending money. Our research shows that employees are spending about $12 or $13 on average every day they buy lunch during the workday. So when employers ask folks to return to the office, they now have to add that commute back into their workday. That takes their time as well. And so providing food immediately lowers the burden. Instead of having one more thing to add, it is a weight lifted for employees for their time and for their mental load and for their wallet. And they see that every single day they get the meal. It's very visible and obvious. And so it's like you get a lot of credit as an employer for what is actually a fairly low expense because it's not just a dollar savings for employees. It is a savings for their mental energy and their time as well.
Yeah,
and of course you're
huge.
providing. Sorry.
No. In terms of the mental load, releasing that mental burden by providing food, it's so true. I mean, I think about how, in the morning I'm scrambling to get myself ready, get breakfast ready, get my daughter ready, get out of the house, make sure I have everything I need, check the traffic, pay for my parking, and not having to think about packing a lunch or what I'm going to eat for the day is such a game changer because it just allows me to release one thing off of my already very full plate in my brain. And it's also a very tangible reminder, right? Like you said, to be able to go in and, ezCater provides a subsidy through our employee meal program where I can go on the app. It's super easy. I select what I want from the rotating selection of local restaurants and it shows up and it makes me feel good. It's that visible reminder that my company is investing in me in a way that is on top of my career development and in a way that I feel on a regular basis.
Yeah, and then let's also talk about how that food is something to look forward to.
Yes, big
It's
time.
delicious food from restaurants. For me, these are restaurants that I don't often get to eat at or eat from in my day-to-day life. And it's exciting. I'm like, oh, I cannot wait for my food from this restaurant to arrive. So it's not just the weight lifted, which is just as important, but it is also such a treat. And I think that 1-2 punch of like, it makes your life logistically easier as an employee, and it's an upgrade to your workday to get that delicious meal. I think the power of those things together is what makes it so appealing for employees.
Yeah. And like you said, there's great variety because you're getting that rotating selection of restaurants. It's way better than any salad I could make for myself. Let's be honest. Somebody else making a salad, it's going to taste 100 times better than if I make it for myself and I'm not a half bad cook. And it's definitely better than any kind of like lame sandwich I'm going to make. And so it is something to look forward to. I know when I get my alert that lunch has arrived from our employee meal program, I book it up the stairs to go get it because I'm pumped. It's something to look forward to in the day, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're going to go into the second reason. Let's talk about that.
Oh, that was it. It was that it's something delicious to look forward to.
Yeah. Great. Perfect. And so I want to go back to what you mentioned about connection and collaboration, because that's a huge part of the workplace experience in today's environment that we're living in. And food helps build the connection and collaboration. And so we talked in previous episodes about just the importance of the workplace and creating those relationships and friendships on site, how employees want to feel more connected to their peers and more engaged with their companies. And 70% of workers say that work events centered around food help them feel more connected to their coworkers. 56% say eating meals with coworkers during their workday improves their workplace experience. And more than half say they'd rather eat with other people than alone. Yet eating alone has somehow become the norm in our very busy days where we're going from one meeting to a next. Sometimes it's easier to just grab food or grab your lunch and eat your desk and kind of get on with your day and power through. But it's an interesting paradox because that's not exactly, as human beings, that's not exactly what we want to be doing. I'm curious, what do you think has driven this shift of, the tendency or the default to maybe eat alone when we are craving more connection and we are craving the ability to connect with people, specifically around food? And how can companies create more opportunities for shared meals?
Yeah, I think it's really about creating the time and creating the physical space for shared meals. And then in doing so, kind of rebuilding that habit of pausing and having a meal together that maybe we lost in days of social isolation, that we're really kind of like crawling back and relearning habits that we maybe lost in that time. So with the physical space, we really hear clearly from employees in our research that to them, the primary purpose of the office is as a central hub for collaboration and connection, more so than meetings. That may be kind of surprising, but more so than meetings, the purpose is that social human connection. And in particular, they look for kind of mixed office spaces that combine open plan areas with more private workspaces. And we can think about how those open plan areas create the physical space to share a meal and connect. So I think that's the first part of it, is like making it obvious there is space for you to do this. You're not going to be disturbing someone else's work. We've created this space for this human connection and for you to share a meal together. And then the second thing that we hear all about, of course, is what you mentioned, which is time. People are busy. Around half of employees say that they skip a meal at least once a week. And when we ask them why, the number one reason is that they feel too busy. They just won't have enough time in their workday to get all of their work done. But when an employer saves or provides the meal, the employee saves time. We also ask about how much time is saved, and we hear in our research that employees save about 30 minutes, about a half hour from their lives when the employer provides a meal for them. So that's the time that can be used to share a meal together. So providing the meal gives them the time to enjoy it together, and providing the space gives them the kind of understanding that it's not just accepted at your workplace, but it's really encouraged for you to take a break, take a little brain break, get to know your coworkers, build some human connections. I don't know about you, but lots of times work conversations come up in that context as well. And that gets you the type of collaboration that really kind of boosts outcomes like we were talking about at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, that's great. So it's creating that inviting space so that people know it's encouraged, you're welcome to do it, it's not a disruption. And then also, you're creating that time that people feel like, we all feel like we don't have enough time. And so that's a pretty powerful motivator and opportunity as well. And so let's talk about Gen Z, those who are a little bit earlier in their career. Media loves to talk about Gen Z. We're no different. They're known as Generation Foodie, or we're terming them as Generation Foodie. I don't know if they're known as that, but we're maybe going to make it a thing. And because younger workers are even more food focused. So Gen Z and millennials are 28% more likely to want food related perks than their Gen X and Boomer counterparts. And Gen Z specifically, 86% of those that we surveyed said that daily or weekly meals provided by their employer would improve their experience at work. That's huge. That's a massive percentage who can be impacted by this additional perk. And so, the generational differences are pretty striking in our data, Madison. And I'm wondering what you think makes food particularly important to those who are earlier in their careers. Do you think it's about preferences, or does it connect to broader workplace expectations for this generation?
I think that, what our data shows is that food equals connection to this younger generation of employees. And in that early career stage, employees are often developing friendships and social circles that let them feel like they belong in the workplace. That time is also about learning. By being in person together, they can easily ask questions and they can listen to some of the critical conversations that happen after the meeting that they may not get when they are kind of working remotely. So while remote work is really flexible, these younger generations kind of crave that connection, and really food equals connection in their minds. Sharing a meal is just how you eat. You just take a break together and get to know each other. There's one Gen Z employee on our team here at ezCater who's always encouraging colleagues to work in person. It's just for these reasons.
We have a dedicated Slack channel for those who are local to the office, which I love. Shout out to the Boston Besties Slack channel.
Yeah, she's constantly messaging us and adding little sweeteners to come in and spend some time together. And, she's really just like such the heartbeat of the culture of our team, because she's asking for this human connection. So food is really just the facilitator there. It's everybody loves food, one generation as much as the next. But I think what Gen Z is really craving is the connection, and food is a facilitator to that.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. I mean, it's interesting because we're all just kind of waiting to be asked, right? We're all just waiting to be asked to come in or have a reason to come in, especially when there's a sweetener or food involved. And it really does make a difference. And I agree. I think the Gen Zers on our team really drive so much collaboration and our culture champions. And so super grateful to them for helping us all create those meaningful connections and collaboration points as well. So we're going to shift to those measurable business outcomes. You named a few of them, Madison, when we were kind of throughout our conversation. And care.com is one of our customers who's seen some pretty impressive business outcomes when it comes to providing food. They're cited in our Future of Workplace report. And for them, they tripled attendance on days where food and learning programming are offered. And so, another example of how these events are surrounded by food create natural opportunities for face-to-face conversation, opportunities to learn and grow, and the chance to connect with leadership and network with your peers. So beyond the aspects of bringing people together over food, can you touch on some of the measurable business impact that companies are seeing when they invest in workplace food programs and what you're finding in your conversations with customers in terms of the measurable business outcomes that they're seeing?
Yeah, of course, on-site attendance is a big one. A lot of our customers who have roles in things like facilities or HR, that's actually a key outcome for them to drive. So it's not just a nice to have, for them in their roles, it is a KPI that they're looking towards. And we have lots of case studies and data to show that food can drive on-site attendance. But in addition to that, which I know is the question, I have a few examples. So one thing you can always look at and that we see in some of our customers is employee engagement scores, especially in a question around whether customers are feeling appreciated whether employees are feeling appreciated, or whether they're feeling kind of connected to their colleagues. We see over and over again in all of our research that receiving a meal from the company makes employees feel appreciated. We ask it in a lot of surveys. It's always like 80 or 90%. It's always really, really high. So I think that's one great place to look and see for measurable outcome. Another one that I've seen is Glassdoor reviews. Actually, I have some really great examples of an increase in sentiment when employees are mentioning the food program on Glassdoor. And we all know that those reviews can directly impact recruiting efforts. So it's another good place to look. I also mentioned before that, in terms of productivity, employees save about 30 minutes every time a meal is provided at work. Those 30 minutes saved across many employees, across time can add up to a real productivity boost. It's a little bit tougher to measure, but the time savings is not hard to measure. Everybody seems to agree across, again, many of our surveys. We ask this to the people who provide the food. We ask it to the employees who eat the food, and everybody says they save time when their employer provides a meal for them. The time savings very measurable, and that can be allocated in lots of different ways to see a business outcome.
Yeah, that's great, Madison. And I know before I let you go, I know like I said, you're a wealth of information and insights when it comes to the role of workplace food, how it contributes to the workplace experience, and what our customers are seeing in terms of the outcomes. So are there any, nuggets of insights or anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to mention as it relates to the workplace experience and the role of food, the role that food plays?
Yeah, of course, we're all about food at ezCater.
We sure
but
are.
Taking a step back, I also see us as a workplace tech company. We are helping workplaces run better because we make managing their food programs just so much more efficient and predictable. And so as a tech company, another thing that I kind of have my eye on is how tech is used in the workplace, and particularly with the rapid growth of AI. So there's a couple of interesting trends that we see in the report. First of all, over half of the workers that we surveyed are already using AI tools at work. And also the younger generation, we talked a lot about Gen Z today, they're kind of leading the shift from email as a primary workplace communication tool to chat as a primary workplace communication tool. And chat and AI really work hand in hand. So it's just one more thing that I've kind of got my eye on in the future. We're starting to see some of those trends today. And it'll be really fascinating to see how those trends evolve in the future. So just one more angle and one more thing that you'll see in the report, and that we're kind of keeping our eye on as well.
I love that. Thanks, Madison. Thanks for a great discussion. As always, I love talking to you, whether it's being recorded or not. And we really appreciate you giving the time. So as a reminder to those who've joined us today, if you're watching on YouTube or listening on a podcast app, we have links to all of the data that Madison cited today in our Future Workplace Experience report, as well as other resources you can check out. And if you'd like to connect with one of us or get in touch with someone at ezCater to discuss how our technology can help improve your company's workplace experience, all that information is there too. So next week, we talked a lot about Gen Z today. We're going to talk more about them and dive deeper next week in a special episode that focuses exclusively on the members who are earliest in their career. Our report revealed some pretty astounding insights about today's emerging workforce, and we had an eye-opening conversation with author, career expert, and columnist Vicky Salemi that you definitely don't want to miss. So check it out, and we'll hopefully join you back soon.
Sounds great. I'll be listening in.
Can't wait.